Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our Retrospective Figure Showcase series, where we look back at some older figures from my collection. Sometimes, like in this case, that also means figures that I haven't fully unboxed, and I've had in storage for an excessively long time. And for today's installment, we're going to go back to the Resident Evil world, and in particular the 5th iteration of the series, to look at the game's main villain, Wesker, in his midnight version look. And before we start, I do have to give a small shout out to Tac2 Has, a channel subscriber who requested this review a while ago. Thanks for hanging in there with me on this one, and hopefully you aren't disappointed. So we've already looked at the Stars version of Wesker on the channel, and that ended up being a great figure overall, especially for an older release. And we also looked at the BSAA version of Chris Redfield. And I will say, even though the Wesker had those exposed elbow joints, I think it still held up well, and I think both figures still hold up well. Now, in preparation for this, I took a look back at some of RE5's cutscenes, just to remind myself about some of the game's events, and in particular, Wesker's action scenes, because the midnight version look is the look from the entire game, but I forgot how much of a badass Wesker was in Resident Evil 5. I mean, he basically spends almost the entire game just beating all of our heroes up in hand-to-hand combat with that Nightcrawler-like teleportation power he has, so the visuals with him are just amazing. So, let's start as we always do by looking at the full package we're getting here. And like with the BSAA Chris Redfield, this Wesker comes with a ton of accessories, including numerous weapons from guns to submachine guns, and then just accessories like the phone and his sunglasses, although those glasses really belong on his face at all times, given the way he looked in the game. And finally, he does come with that old style Hot Toys oval stand, so nice package. But we have to go back to the game, because a lot of these weapons are ones he used in the Stars suit but didn't use it all in the game, so it almost feels like Hot Toys decided to give us some additional accessories for the other figures in the line to use, because like I said before, in the game Wesker was so powerful he basically didn't need weapons at all, since he was the weapon. And just in advance, it's been a while since I played the game, so if I get anything wrong, feel free to chime in and leave a comment just correcting me. Now, let's look closer at these accessories, and we'll start with the spare hands, which for this release are just 2 fists. And that's just how these figures used to be delivered to us. Hands weren't really that critical, but here the fists look good with some nice detail work to replicate the fabric folds you would see. But with all the accessories included, I'm not sure I would choose to display him with these. If anything, they should have given him more posed hands for hand-to-hand combat, but these are serviceable. Now, getting into weapons, we'll start with the one I think is the most visually impressive, and it's this piece that looks very reminiscent of a Stinger missile launcher setup, but it's really a laser designator. And if you recall, this is what Chris actually uses on the cargo ship in the game to kill the giant Ouroboros that sprouts out from Wesker's partner. And Chris basically uses it to laze the target for, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's for a satellite. So paint app wise, it looks good, although there is some sloppy work on the main housing, but it's not too distracting. And then I do like the detail with the hose attachments, which are actually a really rubber material. And then of course the front of that housing with the designator is really nicely recreated, including some text and just some really nice detail work overall. So like I said, not something Wesker uses, but nice to have in hand as an added accessory for Chris. Next you get 2 pistols. The first is the Desert Eagle, which is an exact replica for the one we got with the Stars uniform version, and just like that one, it looks good with the silver and the wood grain panels on the grip, but I do think the bright silver chrome paint app doesn't go well with this version of Wesker in the all black suit. And again, I don't recall Wesker using this in the game. Second gun though is one I remember from the fight Wesker has near the end of the game, when I think he takes the gun from Shiva Alomar and starts using it to keep either Shiva or Chris pinned down. And it looks good with a pretty blocky laser targeting sight at the bottom rail of the gun. But looking back at some of the shots from the game, I think it's pretty good reproduction. And Hot Toys did throw in 2 extra clips for this Beretta. Next weapon is a nice revolver with a long barrel. Again, don't recall him using this, but it could be an alternate accessory or weapon for Chris or Shiva. As far as detail work, this is really impressive. Gun itself is a more matte silver, unlike the Desert Eagle, and I love the detail work, including the rotating cylinder and an actual working hammer. And the top of the barrel does include a rail for accessory attachments, so it does feel a little more modern. Next up is a really nice piece, which is an MP5 in 6 scale form. And even if it's not accurate to the game, I definitely see myself making use of this weapon with Wesker. First of all, I think it goes well with the figure's look, and second of all, this is such a great recreation of this piece with the extendable stock, the flashlight attachment on the handguard, and impressively, and most impressively, and probably taking advantage of Hot Toys' early experiences with military figures, it has a functioning safety to toggle between safe, semi-auto, and full auto. So really nice touch, and it just looks great with that nice matte black paint app. Next, you get the triple barrel shotgun that came with the other figure, and it looks good with some nice paintwork to create the feel of real wood elements, including great detail work at the handle that does recreate that wood grain feel. And the thing with a lot of these pieces is that while they look great, they don't really fit on the figure, like this piece for example, unless he's holding it, so it'll probably stay in the box. And final weapon is his knife, and it looks great with that nicely detailed handle that almost looks like it has an ivory plate onto it, and with a very dangerous looking serrated edge. And it comes with a sheath for it too, all in fabric, so no deterioration concerns. Now, the promo shots for the figure did show this getting attached to Wesker's belt, but going back to the game, I don't think he actually has the knife, so probably won't be using it. Nice piece though. And then you get a few accessories, including a cell phone with a holder for his belt, which I actually don't mind since it'll let you really make nice use of the accessory, although the holder does seem a tad blocky. The cell itself has some nice detail work and interesting paint apps with a dark green ending in a gray keypad. But after that, you also get his very cool looking sunglasses, and he basically wears these for the entire game with a few exceptions, like obviously the end during the ridiculous fight with lava around him, and when he shows off his reptilian looking lit up eyes. But I think the glasses look great, and for me are vital to the figure. And finally, you get a pretty nicely detailed wristwatch with some great work on the face to make it look real. I always tend to be impressed when we get actual detailing as opposed to stickers to recreate the watch face. And the final accessory included is a shoulder holster to hold his sidearm and the spare clips. And you do see him with this in the game, so while he doesn't really use weapons throughout, this is something that's screen accurate. Although it is a little big, and I think part of that is that as opposed to doing a pleather or fabric element, Hot Toys made this out of rubber. So on the one hand, it's not going to peel or fall apart on you, but it does look a little bit plasticky. So with the accessories out of the way, let's get into the figure sculpt. And if you saw my other Wesker review, you're getting the exact same sculpt here, and just like with that one, I think this one holds up well too. The eyes aren't as well done as some of the more modern figures we've seen, but that's also partially due to the need to have this light up feature. Beyond that though, the paint apps on the face and the detail work is all great and impressive, and you can actually make out some subtle facial hair, or the shadow of a mustache at least. And then the detail work on the hair with the slick back look just looks great, so I'm pretty happy with this one. And once you add in the sunglasses, this guy looks really impressive, especially with his overall look. There's very much a cool factor to the way he looks. Now, looking at the overall figure, while it's just a black suit and jacket, there is a ton of detail work and fabric work here. First of all, I'm happy to say the jacket and his pants aren't, or at least don't feel like a full pleather material, so it's more of a light fabric. And I'm also happy to say that even after spending years in a box, he's still in pretty good shape, almost pristine. Although I did notice some minor cracking in the jacket, but no peeling of any sort. The jacket is wired at the bottom, and it does look like leather-like. And Hot Toys, if you look closely, also did manage to recreate that checkerboard pattern on the jacket and on the pants. Now, I do think the jacket needs a little futzing around because it is a little wrinkled up, but I think part of that is just because of the figure being in storage for as long as it was. Now, under his jacket, he has a rubbery feeling undershirt that isn't as shiny, but still has the texture that feels very much like it carries on that same pattern from the jacket and the pants. And that look then goes back to the shininess again for those pants, which match the jacket. And then they all end up in these rubbery matte black boots that have some nice zipper detailing on the inside. And you can also create an alternate look by removing the jacket and just adding in the holster underneath. But I will say that as opposed to the Starsuit version, without the jacket, the chest and abdomen do seem a little ill-proportioned. Could just be me, but I think there's something a bit odd there, so I definitely think there's an improved look using the jacket. But it is still another option. So where did I land with this guy? I really like it. I think he actually looks great, and while he needs some work on the jacket to get it to drape a little more naturally, I do think the figure has a huge cool factor to it, a big wow factor. Now, even though I do have him posed and standing on his own, I did find that his leg joints can be a little finicky and loose. Could just be age, but he does have trouble holding certain poses. So there are shots where you'll see the stand, just because I found that the figure would tip over after a little bit. Also, I did try to recreate one of those air poses where he's spinning around. Not sure I succeeded, but I do feel like he could have benefited from a flight pole, since one of the appeals of this version of the character had to be the crazy aerobatics he performs during his fights. So that would be key to recreating some poses here. Posing wise, I'm happy to say that there really isn't much restrictiveness with the clothing, and he is able to attain some nice poses without issue. And while it might not be accurate, it is nice to pose him up with some of the weapons he includes, especially that MP5. For some reason, that weapon and the figure just feel like they belong together and go hand in hand. But the figure again just looks awesome, and while the clothing choice isn't something you might see in live action, this is a video game piece and it looked great in the game, and I think it looks great in figure format. I do feel like the tailoring isn't as great as what we've gotten used to recently from Hot Toys. Shirt, for example, tends to get a little wacky and a little bulgy depending on the pose, and the pants may be a little too baggy. But even with those issues, I still think this turned out great, and the question is, will we ever really see another version of Wesker like this? I honestly don't know. With the Resident Evil 4 remake and the Resident Evil 2 remake, there seems to be a lot of reinvigorated interest in the series. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. And you know, one of the things about starting this channel, it's really given me an opportunity to look back at pieces I've had for a while that sometimes might get lost in the bustle of trying to get the newest figures. And it's nice to be able to go back and realize how great some of these actually are, and why they're such a nice addition to the collection. And for me, looking back at all these Resident Evil figures has definitely reinvigorated my interest in the series. So I still have 2 RE5 figures left to unbox, including the Stars version of Chris and the Jill Valentine from RE5, so I'll definitely be getting to those soon. And of course, Damn Toys is still releasing things, and you've got a lot of third-party launches for RE4 right now. So I'm starting to get back into that mode of picking up figures that could help me complete some of the voids in the line. But again, really happy with this figure, and if you have him or get a chance to pick him up, I think it would provide something unique and different from the superhero figures we're getting, or the Star Wars figures. So that was a quick look at Wesker in his Midnight Suit version. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.